All right. Good morning and welcome back to Topics and Tangents here on Gaming with ADHD, where today I am joined by my good friend Zane. Hello, Zane. How are you, sir?
I'm walking upright.
You're walking upright. I mean, any day that you get out of bed, I guess, is
absolutely.
So, anyway, so folks, basically it's topics and tangents. I'm trying to make myself be good about doing this regularly so that I can make sure that I have a spot for interviews and just discussions and panels and whatnot. And so Zane graciously decided to agree to help kick me in the butt and make that happen tonight. And so here we are, because this is also kind of a makeup from last night when his potato decided that it did not want to play nice with the other people in our game. How dare you, Zane?
I know. The joys of life. You can't guarantee that the technology will do what you want it to do. So you just adapt and move on.
Right. You buy the cord that you think is going to hook your monitor up to the computer. And then no, you have to go with the completely other monitor that you didn't, or the other cord that you didn't buy. And then you just want to stab everyone.
That's about the truth of it right there. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, folks. So basically, we're just going to talk about whatever. This is literally just going to be a straight up tangent stream. But also we're going to get to know Zane a little bit, because I kind of look at Zane as sort of a mentor, beyond just a friend. And I think he's got lots of wise things to share with us. So anyways, Zane, introduce yourself.
Oh yeah. I mean, way to set me up. Put me on the spot. Been around more than a bit, done a few crazy things. The things that I'm proud of is I rode a motorcycle across the United States, the lower 48, in 9 months when I was a very, very young man. I generally try to take the path less traveled to stomp on an overused quote. I'm not against, as we said earlier, you pivot. It's like, well, that didn't work. Next, and I generally try to be present in the conversation so that I can understand somebody's point of view before I make the decision to either agree or argue. And this is, I think that was one of the things that when you and I first met that kind of drew us together, because it was I came to you with a question and I didn't want an answer. I wanted a conversation so there was understanding. Mostly so that I didn't have to repeat the conversation. I'm a big person. I'm a big believer in trying to be in the moment so that you don't have to repeat yourself.
All right. So, okay. For the record, folks, Zane and I met while we were working, at my current employer. You're going to have to remind me of this, because I just know that Zane showed up and would come ask me questions. And then I would yell at you to stop using Comic Sans. Well, I mean, that came later, but
that was later.
Yeah. but it's interesting that you that you put it that way, that you wanted to, that you didn't want to just ask me a question. You wanted to have a conversation. And I'm really curious as to A, what that was, and B, why you wanted to have a conversation with me. I wasn't any less weird than I am now.
Oh no. Yeah, I'll be the first one to agree with that particular statement. The thing of it is that the situation we were in was to our chagrin, was a sales-based environment, and neither of us are. I'm not a bigger, better deal kind of guy. I'm not an always be closing. All those little happy salesman bullshit tactics. I want to. What's the problem? What are we trying to solve here? Because quite honestly, I don't want you to call back. I don't want to talk to you again. And if you do call back, I want it's because I did something right, not because I did something wrong. So when I got an opportunity to get, when I got shuffled over from the classic inbound group into the, it's like, oh, you know, we're going to take you up to hosting. This is going to be a big technical upgrade. And you get up there and you're like, no, it's not. It's a show. You're still trying to tell everybody and their brother. I'm still trying to sell grandma crap that she doesn't need. No, I got up there because I wasn't selling to grandma. I was asking a question. What do you want? What's the purpose of this conversation? Why are you even calling me? Which caught a lot of people off guard. The leadership in that area didn't know what to do with me, which I thought was hilarious, because if there's anything I enjoy more than is absolutely screwing with leadership. And the other part of it is that when I got into the more technical, quote unquote, technical position, come to find out it's still a shill. Well, all right. Well, how do I make this more fun for me? Well, if I'm going to, one of their classic statements, we're not here for a long time, but we're here for a good time. Kiss my ass. That was that was their way of saying, how do I expedite the process of separating you from your buck? I entered into a verbal contract of employment with the understanding that I was going to exit that employment with intelligence, or at least some knowledge that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And where I was watching the people around me, they'd get up and they'd go over and they would talk to the technical people, which at that particular point, you were a technical point of contact, not directly for my group, but you were one of the many, or actually one of the few technical points of contact. And I'd set a reputation downstairs with that group as well, that you were part of, that when I came up to ask a question, it was never the same question. It was not, let me rephrase that, because absolutes suck. It was very seldom for me to ask the same question twice. And this allowed me to garner additional knowledge so that I could ask fewer and fewer questions. So every time I came to you, or each time that I came to an individual in your position, it was going to be a new and different conversation, because I didn't want to come back for the same topic. And there were certain people you could go to and they were just like, oh my God, I can't believe you've bothered me. This just so sucks. You're so stupid. Go away. And then there were others that would have a conversation and they're like, you asked me what? Wait, why? And they would come back. Why are you asking me this question? And you were one of those people that asked me why I was asking you that question. So I had my favorites. We had a few people that their egos were bigger than their pants, and I just let them go and stew in their own ego. It's like, have fun with that. I just won't bug you anymore. And the people that were willing to educate or pass on knowledge or offer insights into a path that I could go on my own, I went back to that fountain and I kept drinking there as often as humanly possible. The other fun part about it was, with you specifically, is there was great deals of sarcasm. And plus you, like so many people that I enjoy's company, you speak movie quotes in sarcasm. Simpatico. And for that particular reason, we were able to take a less than enjoyable environment and make it fun. And that continued over time as we changed roles and or moved up through the ranks and things. We were able to continue the communication and the styles, and it was still fun.
Yeah, no, it is one of those things where I definitely remember, like, I don't remember anything you ever asked at all. I couldn't tell you.
Oh no.
But I do remember just that level of fun, that level of interaction that we were able to have. Like, okay, so for the folks that were here a few minutes ago, I mentioned about, I would yell at you to stop using Comic Sans.
That was, yeah. Let me tell that story, because that is a story well worth the story. That's a story worth the telling. It was the first dozen times we've told it. For those that don't know, we had at the particular time, there was an email-based response. There was a technical support through email at that particular time, and I got shuffled into the group because we were also doing where I was not technically qualified, but I got shuffled into the group as a test unit for server support. And I went over and I was doing online server support, which, and that's where I was running 3, 4, 5 conversations at a time. And I was also got in with Red and a few, oh man, there was 2 other very physically large individuals that also ran email support. Brilliant. I'm not bemoaning their physical limitations had no bearing on their mental capacity. They were incredibly brilliant people. They were just very uncomfortable in the chairs they were provided. And they were teaching me how to efficiently take incoming questions by email and respond. I thought this was because the more contact you have, the more information you're going to be exposed to, the more you can learn. Yes, this sounds like fun for me. And my leadership understood that as well. It's like, oh, well, give a dog a bone, let him go. He'll find some squirrel little node of information and he'll run that nut to the ground. I mean, what I think I just made 5 separate movie references in the last 2 minutes. That's pretty good. So I get these, I'm running these and we're going through, and I can't remember. As a joke, I understand that Comic Sans was made in spite. Okay, as a font, it was created to piss other people off, and it was never meant to really actually do the things. And if you go up and spend the time to go read the story behind Comic Sans, the font, it's worth it. It's hilarious in my opinion.
Oh, I just assumed it was. I just assumed it was to make putting in the lettering for comic books easier.
Nope, it was made in spite.
Oh.
It was yeah. So as a joke, because it was made in spite, I was using it in spite, and I was taking the documents because I could create and the interface for the email response was clunk. It was absolutely garbage. So I'd have my doc open, pop it in, grab it, copy paste, and I did not consider that the HTML tags were going to flip over, and I didn't run an internal test document to verify that. So I'm doing in comics, your standard things where you're tippity tap and I'd write out a big old response in anger. Then it
quote unquote professional work type emails.
Exactly. So you condense it down and it's technically accurate and it's work appropriate. And then you send this off to the customer so that they can resolve their particular issue. And you have embedded text and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. Well, to keep myself entertained, I was doing this in Comic Sans because I understand the spite involved with it. So I'd copy it, I'd paste it, not realizing the HTML tags. Because who in there, I don't know what genius wrote that particular interface, but the fact that they did not clear HTML tags prior to sending out to the customer so that this would go in plain text, I spent more than a couple years trying to track down what intern did that so I could smack them. And I was probably 2 or 3 months. So I had several, because I was doing 40 to 60 responses a day just in the email response. I can only imagine what I was doing on the server chat, because that was all in Comic Sans as well. So I was several hundred responses deep when you got a hold. Somebody brought an email response to you, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and I'm tickety tap, because I wasn't one of the guys that ran with my headphones on for music.
And folks, real quick, keep in mind this is in a call center, because I know what point Zane's getting to next. Keep in mind this is a call center with people relatively close together.
We had there was that particular floor and area, there was somewhere close to 300 people. Yeah. And at a volume that is stadium worthy, I hear, "Say, stop using Comic Sans." And I stopped and I went, "Oh." Because when you said it, I was like, I know what he's talking about. Oh, bugger me. So I did. I ran an email support, but I sent it to my email, and sure snot, it come up in Comic Sans, and I went, oh. So now now I have to own, own it. So I took it to my leadership. So it goes to I wound up in a VP's office.
Oh, did you really?
Oh yeah. Oh, it was not my first time in HR and in a VP's office, and it definitely wasn't the last time. But it was a conversation between the director, the VP, and HR as to what I had done. And
over Comic Sans in an email.
There were consistent complaints of unprofessionalism. It was an unprofessional communication within the business environment, and I'm like, they have no sense of humor. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're not removing the HTML tags. You're fools. What amateur wrote this garbage? And so I mean, it was a simple fix. It was 3 lines of code that I got into the back end of that system and added 3 lines of code to do a strip before all communications went out. Come to find out, some of the fonts that were going out were there was a couple different Gothic scripts that were going out. So it was in a cursive, old English cursive was going out because nobody else knew. So it wasn't until you screamed across this call center, 300 people are all grabbing their microphones like, oh, B. Wade is angry again. Who did the things? And I'm like, I did. That's my fault.
Well, and I think okay, first off, I didn't know some of those details, so that's great. But I do think one of the best parts about that is that I kept doing it.
Oh no, that turned into, and you weren't the only one. Because anybody that was upstairs, because I was in that transition between, I can't remember what we were called before, but before hosting got split into the 2 different groups, so that you had the Dragonflies and you had hosting. There was, I can't remember what we were called. I came in just as they split the group apart.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's a non-issue kind of a thing. But so I had access to enough of the quote unquote old timers that are the old hats that even though I was pretty much a nub in their eyes, that I got in under the old standard. So the next several hirings you weren't required to be as technically competent over the next several hirings. So we saw a quality of performance just tank hard from a technical standpoint, which I thought was, I got a big kick out of it. And the other part of it is that, like I said, is I'd go and ask questions because I didn't want to ask you again. And then you guys absolutely threw me under the bus because it was hilarious. I remember there were still Dragonflies and they wanted to have a backup. Remember the Firefly program?
Mm-hmm.
And I was a Firefly. And you guys every single Dragonfly on the floor got up and went into a meeting. And there were no other Fireflies. And all of a sudden I'm answering questions that I'm like, okay. And they want me to, and I was doing, so I was boxed in. So I was, as I was running a server chat and I was doing a remote access I was RDP'd into some dude's box somewhere else. And because remember back then we'd go into private servers as well. And at the same time, I've got 3, 4, 5 people lined up asking physical questions. And I'm like, bugger off. I'm about to shut down this guy's box. Let's see what happens. And they were like, you're doing what? And that's when I knew it was at that particular point. Because I remember you came over to give me a hard time. You're like, so what was it like being on the floor? And I'm going to take this chat because I need a cigarette. It was, and which was a lot of fun. As time, and then the nice part was, as time progressed and we each moved through the things, the Comic Sans joke continued for another 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years.
Every now and again, I still think about it.
Oh, yeah. It's idiotic and hilarious. because something as simple as an HTML code messed with hundreds of people and the unprofessional communication. I think that's hilarious.
Well, but it like, to me, the thing that I enjoy most about the story is just the fact that it's one of like the people we care about in life always seem to show up in just strange ways. Like, I don't remember you really prior to the whole Comic Sans incident.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I can believe it.
I can vaguely remember you being there, coming and asking questions, being quote unquote professional about it. Great. No big deal. Then suddenly this Comic Sans thing goes off, and I'm, like, you walk by and I'm just yelling, because that's what I remember is like after that, because I drive a joke into the ground, Zane just comes walking by my desk, not even to talk to me, just goes walking by. Zane, stop using Comic Sans, and everybody on the floor is like, why is Brian yelling again? Yeah. This is dumb. So, but that's the reason that I love that story, is it's just like, here's a person that I like, that I care about, and here's just this dumb way that we got to talk to each other. Like the story I tell about Kim and how we met. We were in a class together. She'd gotten out of another class early and was walking up, and I literally looked at her. I'm like, I am not going to say anything to that cute girl from my public speaking class. She said hi, and it's been downhill for her ever since.
Ever since.
So, anyways, that I think is kind of crazy, especially when you consider stuff like gaming and work and just other relationships, how those people all come together. So, anyways, that was fun. I didn't even realize, I didn't remember like any of what you said outside of yelling at you for stopping using comic. I didn't even remember I was the one that discovered it.
Oh yeah, no, and it was definitely a snowball effect, and I think that was one of the things that I've enjoyed in life overall, is a rather innocuous encounter snowballed into something completely different. And it was because, if I remember correctly, one of the things that I thought was hilarious is that there were at the time, you had a reputation of being a rather difficult individual to work with. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's a freaking teddy bear. And they're like, no, he's B. Wade's scary. I'm like, no, he's not. I'm like, dude, I've seen Scary. This guy's he's the biggest teddy bear on the planet. Talk to him like a human being. And first of all, have a question that's worth asking. Second of all, talk to him like he's a human being. And finally, use sarcasm liberally, and you'll be fine. And but you got to remember, most of the people that were on the floor at that particular point, until I transitioned through that particular range, most of the people that I worked with and then was later mentoring, they viewed your position, or anybody in that strata of knowledge, they're like, oh, that's scary. They're extra smart. And I'm like, they put their pants on the same way, man. Just ask them a question.
Yeah, no, and I do remember that there were a lot of people that, like, the agents that, like, at that particular, like, now I get kind of annoyed having to support agents because that's not technically what I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, there were a lot of people that just didn't. It's almost like they were burdened by having to be there to do their job, and I totally get that. I do have to point this out. So our GM from last night, this is his partner, Grim Squirrel. And then there's me and Seraphis. I met him and was like, he's clearly a psycho, potentially a serial killer. I like a challenge.
Oh, yeah. When I had that first chance to interact with Seraph, I was like, Oh, I cannot wait to get an opportunity to cross swords from a mind's eye point perspective. This is going to be fun. Whether it's working along towards a goal or working against an individual, depending upon the type of games you play. Uh, he strikes me as fun. And that was, and quite honestly, I've been pretty lucky in that the individuals that you've introduced me to over time, for the most part, it's been, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better, kind of a thing, and it's been a lot of fun, mostly because you bring a genre and perspective that I don't have in my life, generally speaking. Most of the people that are, except for little Dave, most of the people in my life are quite a bit older than you. hence the hair. And I mean, granted, I'm not an old guy, but at the same time, I'm sure as hell not young. And you come from a quite literally a different generation of your gaming style is different. Your thinking pattern and your logic processes are different from a role playing perspective. However, I can easily track your logic and your thought process when it comes to coding and server support. So we had a common ground, and it made it a lot easier for me to communicate.
Sure. So, all right. So let's flip over to gaming in general now that you've kind of brought that up. So being a bit more on the, we'll say, wizened side. How did you get into gaming?
So I was a chainmail player in '74. Was the first time I played. There was of all the things, it was in Cub Scouts. I was in Cub Scouts, and one of the kids' dads, Larry Sharp. I remember this guy really well because he was the only dad that we knew. He had a Commodore 64 computer. And for us to get the one merit badge in computing, which was brand new to the thing at the time, we had to, we were breadboarding. We were doing circuit building exercises, breadboard, to connect to the Commodore 64, and we were running it through an oscillator to build voice recognition. All it was looking for lows and highs, but it was voice recognition, and that was our science project. And Larry's dad was a chainmail player, and chainmail was a miniature. It was a tabletop miniature game with, and it was mostly this group was mostly medieval. There was some Napoleonic Wars, that kind of stuff. But these guys were mostly fantasy. So this is the old little squat, nasty pieces of lead figurines is what we were using. And shortly after, so I got into that, and I was like, I'm not a big fan of where the Napoleonic Wars were interesting to read, and I understand the theories behind the helionics and that kind of stuff for warfare, for tabletop warfare. And the Spartans and the Helios and the Athenians and the Mycenaeans, blah 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 blah. Right? There was that group. There was no real fantasy at that point, so there was a lot of Greco-Roman era. Then there was the Napoleonics, so pre 1740, it was so like 1500, 1740. There was that kind of thing. So there was mostly cavalry, and I got into it, and it was like, well, this is rather interesting, and it taxed my mind because I was even though at that point in my life I had already read Vernon Wells and Clark and H.P. Lovecraft. I was a big Lovecraft fan. But I had already, and Tolkien and a lot of that kind of, so I was a voracious reader. So transferring into a tabletop was pretty easy because I understood what they were talking about, even though, I'm 11 years old, right? I'm 9, 10, 11 years old. And these are 30, 40 year old guys playing. So it's kind of weird when you show up wide eyed. And of course I had color in my hair back then. but it was here's this kid and he's got his miniatures, and my miniatures were I was just using the Green Army Men because I couldn't afford. I had a paper route, but I couldn't afford the miniature, so I had my Green Army Men, and they each one represented the units, and we'd sit down and we'd do tactics. Okay, well, it wasn't shortly thereafter that the Red Box came out, the D&D Basic, and once again, Larry's dad, man, he had it. He went out and he got it, and we sat, and he was like, "Hey boys, how'd you like?" He says, "I know you're not having as much fun on the table. How'd you like to, instead of doing armies, let's do single characters?" I'm like, what? Well, that'd be different. And he was our first DM. So it was him, his oldest boy, and then there was like 3 or 4 other Cub Scouts. And that was what that was the catalyst to get us started into actual role playing, because up until that point there really wasn't we were in Podunk, South Dakota at this point, right? So
right.
There's
3
other
people anyways.
What's that?
There's 3 other people anyways.
Yeah. Oh well, because I remember this was fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, and I remember because there was immediately middle 70s. There was 2 things that were working against the role-playing community. One was the rock band Kiss, glam rock, pop, Kiss. Of course, at that particular point, their thing was, "Oh, that's Kings and Satan's service." And I kid you not, that's what they thought it meant.
That's okay. There was also the Antichrist Devil's
the other
Child.
Part is that by that time, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons had also come out, but not, and I think we had first edition as well. And there was the Gorgon was in the monster manual. Oh, we had demons and devils in the Gorgon and such. And let me tell you, the people that were looking for any reason to, shake their finger at you. Well, you're playing with, your children are doing devils. They listen to the Kings and Satan service and they're playing games with the devil. And I'm like, and I remember I heard about this much later. A bunch of moms came to my mom and was like, and it was one of the, and said, "How can you possibly let your child play this game, knowing, they listen to this music, the satanic music, and they're playing this game of evil. How can you possibly do it?" And my mom's response was not to defend the game. And I found this out much later. I was in my 30s. She says, "No, I just told him." I said, "Well, I know where my son is on a Friday night. Do you know where yours is?" Well, now. But by the time I got to high school, we had Steve Jackson Games. Was Car Wars was a big thing. Traveler, the first Traveler was out and about. Car Wars was mostly just cars. There wasn't individual characters. That came later. Steve Jackson created effectively his role playing evolved out of the original miniatures. But that was, I remember, and this will tell you just how bad of a nerd I was. For my 16th birthday, I invited over a dozen people, and we were going to have sloppy joes, pistachio salad, and play D&D all night, and we did. And I had a dozen people show up. I just threw out invitations to a few people that I knew. I was like, "Hey man, do you play D&D?" Yeah, play D&D. That's silly. And then they come back later. "Yeah, I do. Why? What's going on?" I said, "Well, we're gonna do a thing at the house, and you're more than welcome to show up." And I was shocked and amazed when all 12 people that I invited showed up, and we did. We played D&D till 4:00 in the morning. We passed out we were jazzed up on Mountain Dew and every kind of sugar known to man. And somewhere around 4 a.m. we fell asleep while playing. People just face down on the carpet while they're playing. And it's like, "Well, he's unconscious." I'm like, "Yeah, no kidding." And that's when I knew it, because at that point I'd been playing for four or 5 years, and I was like, it's the theater of the mind's eye, and that's what I knew. That was something that I really really enjoyed. So I've played with it ever. So that's 74. That was 40, almost 50 years ago.
But that was 51 years ago.
Hey,
and technically, I'll be honest. Some of what you were saying, I'm like, okay, I don't think his math is all right there. Yeah,
it's not.
Because D&D came out in 74. Redbox, I think, was 79.
I thought the Redbox was almost immediately.
No, because you're thinking the white box and the brown box.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. No, in my head, I'm not. We are older gentlemen at this point. Getting the dates right isn't always that important,
right?
Especially in this kind of a story. It's like, what's more important, getting the date right or getting the feelings and the understanding about why you got into something? What was it that attracted you to the game? Like, I'm not worried about, were you a Cub Scout in 74 or 77? What? Anyways, it's fine. I just thought it was funny. But I do think it's kind of interesting that you like, I have talked to people that went through the Satanic Panic. I do think it's interesting where you mentioned that it's more, or that it wasn't just Dungeons and Dragons. It was kind of everything.
Oh yeah.
Which is not usually the perspective that you hear. Usually it's just, nope, it's, it just affected Dungeons and Dragons. So I think that is really interesting. What was it about the game? What was it about? We'll stick with Dungeons and Dragons. What was it about that made you stick with it? Obviously you're getting into high school and everyone's like, oh, that's what those nerds do. I'm not one of those. But you're like, I don't care. I'm inviting everyone.
Invite everyone. Well, that was okay. So there was a couple things that really not only did it draw me to the picking that particular game, it pretty much solidified for the rest of my life. Not only a lot of my perspectives and a lot of what I find joy in, and the information, the things that I try to find out. It was this. I could sit down with. Well, first of all, I was a band nerd. I was a sound and light guy in theater. So I was not a theater nerd, but I was the sound and light guy in theater. I hung out with the Motorheads and the Metalheads, but I was not, even though I wasn't a jock, I ran constantly with the track and field guys. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that as you've encountered with you and I, is that I seem to be able to float between groups pretty casually. I'm very social, which is I find humorous. What? I'm the kind of guy, people walk up and just start talking to me. And I'm the kind of guy that gets invited to weddings for no particular reason. That you see somebody at a roadside stop sign, and the next thing I know, I've been invited to dinner. It drives my Kim insane. So I tell these things not as a humble brag or to pat my pat myself on the back. It's to say that I had acquaintances in a lot of different groups. And I moved rather seamlessly between these groups without judgment, which was a hell of an advantage from a junior high school perspective. Because generally speaking, this afforded me a level of neutrality that was not, it's like, oh, he's this is one of the band geeks. Let's go, dunk his head in the toilet. That was not, they wouldn't, because I was, the wide receiver on the football team was one of the guys that played in one of my games very regularly. what did I enjoy about the game? We'll get back to the topic at hand. I made those statements so that you would understand the references I'm about to make, and which is when we'd sit down to play a game, I could have I could have a band geek next to a motorhead, next to a metalhead, next to a punk or a goth kid, next to one of the jocks. We were regularly playing. Our games were a small game was 8 people, a large game was 15. That's a lot of chaos, first of all.
Yeah.
And it was not uncommon for us to run 2 or 3 characters apiece. So we were fielding an army, quite honestly. This is
24 people, yeah.
Not quite a platoon worth of characters hitting the floor. Now, we were raised under the old school D&D, which it was extremely unforgiving. My very first character rolled it, turned my head around a corner to look down the corner and took an arrow to the head. I had 3 hit points and I took 6 points of damage. That was the fastest. I was like, Zane, did you make another character? Yes, I did. I've got 6. Let's. So we played it was total player kill, which I know now the whole, I've killed a character. There was a period of time where if I didn't kill half the characters or more, I did not give them enough of a challenge. And then it became quite a bit softer. But the thing of it is that I would sit there and I would watch the band geek talking to the motorhead and, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? No, I hadn't thought about that. Hey, DM, I want to do a thing and let's try that. And so they were watching these different groups of people interact with each other that had, from their own perspective, they had different ideas on how to approach the problem instead of just straight up Hulk smash. Well, how do we garner favor with this guard, or how do I avoid this situation? How do I disarm this problem so that I don't have to do conflict? Or you know what? Today is a smash and grab. Everything dies. He dies, she dies, everybody dies. Choose your particular. When you sat down on any particular gaming night, I had no idea what my players were going to bring to me. I had a general theme. Because I DM'd a lot, not all the time, but most of the time I DM'd. And my fun that I derived was watching the group as itself interact based off of who was sitting at the table that particular night. Their perspectives gave me thought. They made me stop and question. And that is what, once I realized that's when I knew the hook. The hook was set, man. I'm in for the long haul, and this is fun, and I want to do this as often as possible. I played it when I had 10 years in service. I played that at least weekly. We played D&D or some role-playing game. Even when we were playing video games, got into mostly video games, we were still playing D&D or some variation thereof. And it's because the mind's eye was more powerful. I can create more things in my imagination than I could ever see on somebody else's screen.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really interesting things about this style of game is like I know that I struggle because like I need some sort of a hook. Don't just give me something, you can do whatever you want. It's like, okay, but I like you at least have to aim me, point me in a direction, and I can come up with stuff. Like me and another group were talking about maybe doing a Star Wars game, and like it devolved it like the GM's like, okay, no Jedi. Okay, and in my head I'm fine with that, but then all the other players like, well, I want to do a Jedi. Well, I want to do a Jedi. What if we do Sith Lords? And like we can do a whole party of Sith Lords, and everyone just like, or like the GM's is like, well, I'm gonna be out because that's not the game that I want to play. And I'm like, well, I would like to play a hero as well. But okay, no Jedi. Can I be an ex-Imperial spy that got turned, to the rebellion, as I was being a spy, and so now I'm acting as double agent. The GM's like, that's actually great. We can go with that. So it's like, okay, you at least gave me some sort of some sort of a constraint, and then it's like, oh, now I can come up with something. But yeah, being able to see those different ideas, come up with different ways of doing things. I do find it kind of interesting, like especially in gaming, they always talk about now, like, well, we can't we can't exclude anyone. We can't like everybody has to be able to come in and play. But nowadays it does seem like there's always the same kind of players. But then when I talk to quote unquote older players, and I just mean people who have been playing a lot longer than I have, but that's a separate story for a different day. They are always talking about, well, oh, in my group we had the football player and the motorhead and the band geek and et cetera. Like, you had these groups from all over. Whereas even as the game has become more accessible, at least visually, it doesn't seem to have that same cross section. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and I tend to agree with your statement.
Why do you think that is? You and your cricket.
Give me a second. Give me a second to formulate that particular response, because I'm going to step on a lot of toes. So accuracy in language, man, it'll burn you every single time. The original environment was set up in such a way that you were encouraged to find a common ground. Okay, so that we knew that the cleric was a pincushion, and with that knowledge, I needed to find a way to make sure that cleric made it to the end, because without the cleric at the end, we're not going to make it. Remove and insert any particular class you want. Rogue, mage, fighter, blah, blah, whatever. And because there was this perceived, you were in the earlier portions of the game, I can remember that you were playing in such a way that our time was limited with what we had for free time to do the things that we wanted to do. And we were, and quite technically, we were, even though they may be popular within their particular group, but the fact that we came together was not a popular thing to be done. And the exercise of what we were doing was not popular either. So therefore we had to support each other. And we looked at it as our differences as strengths. And it's like, I could look at, because, we get asked a question. One of my favorites was, we had one of the wide receivers was in football. When Jacques was asking a question, and the motorhead responded. He says, "No, man, I can." We were talking about lifting some ridiculous weight, and the earlier portions of the game was rather there was a lot of math, or could be a lot of math involved. And we were doing the things, and the motorhead says, "Well, listen, I know for a fact that I can squat over an inline 4 and pull it out. If the bracket mounts are removed, I can pull an inline 4." And I'm like, one, good Lord. And two, that's an interesting concept, because, and then you could roll back and say, well, you're built like this. So if you're saying that you're lifting an inline 4 weighs this much, that means you have this kind of strength. Well, if you've got that kind of strength, the character has got this, they can do that as well. So you would suspend belief for the fantasy. However, we were rooted in a lot of logic, and this brought people together as they were sharing experiences or knowledge in their particular field of interest, and they were bringing that to the game, and everybody was benefiting from it. So it was a very and this is a hot pocket word, and so it's a very inclusive environment. You felt welcome to be there. There was a period of time, and this is where there was a period of time in the gaming environment where I felt as an I went to a group and I sat down and I sat through one play session. And it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my recent existence, because there were multiple members of that group that felt the necessity to explain to me things that in my mind were obvious and didn't need to be explained, because they didn't think instead of trusting me to ask the questions, they felt necessary to explain to me what they didn't think that I would know or understand. And it was exceptionally belittling. And I bounced through several groups in that fashion. I'd show up, we have a conversation, and we start to play, and I get this. I get old. Well, it's some call it mansplaining or women's planning. Well, I call it old splaining. I was
grog-splaining.
What's that?
Grog-splaining.
That's a good one. I was being explained a process or procedure because there was a perceived lack of understanding, and it made the environment less inviting to participate in. And I asked my brother about it because my baby brother plays with his kids. His kids are teenagers, just 13 and 15. And I asked him about it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, no." He goes, "The way we played versus the way they play now it's a different world, man." He said, you have to be much more restrictive in your language, restricted in your behaviors, and quite honestly, crimes against humanity, which, the hobo murder squad that it was a very popular form of gameplay for a while, is, oh no, you can't do that. And I'm not saying that that's the only way to play. What I'm saying is that you were not currently allowed the opportunity to explore taboo topics at the table with a group of people, because you're afraid of offending or excluding someone, and it has detracted from the ability to play the game. Am I expressing myself appropriately, do you think?
No, I think you are. Like, for me, what I think is interesting, though, and kind of a little more what I was going for with the original question, is it seemed like the older groups tended to attract across groups more than they do today.
I apologize. I went down the wrong path.
No. Okay, Zane, it's always interesting, but because I mean, number one, I agree pretty much with everything you said, and actually, I want to highlight a couple things from Grim. So I feel like a thing these days is that people are saying you've got to be inclusive, and that takes away the fun because it feels like you have to do something, and that it's there in the background.
Well said.
Yeah, and then back then it was just, hey, we like games, and just happened to be different coincidentally.
Yes.
Right. And that's what I was kind of going for, is like, you didn't have to hang out with just the nerds. Like I said, the jock, the motorhead, the band geek, etc., the cheerleader, everybody would end up in the group together, even though they would never necessarily hang out with each other, under normal circumstances.
Absolutely. You'd cross paths publicly and it'd be like, "What's up, dork?" And keep on walking. But at the same time, there was on the side, you're just like, "Hey, buddy." It was a place in which one of the strangest things that I remember is that I had a buddy that was oh man, he could turn a wrench like nobody's business. Absolutely brilliant with what he could do with an engine. And I remember asking him, it's like, "Dude, why are you here? You get invited to all the parties and such. Why are you here?" He was like, "Because this is fun." And we afforded him the opportunity just to, you'd finish reading a book and you'd come to the group and it's like, hey man, I read a thing. I want to try this. Okay, let's try it. And now it's like my little brother with his kids, when they're playing, everybody in my old, it's my one of my younger nephews, everybody in his gaming group, social, economic, and interest wise, they're equivalent.
Yeah.
How is that any fun? You're clones of each other at this particular point. There's no opportunity for conflict, strife, or learning. I learned so many things from we had this there was more than a couple kids that just, they'd come in there and man, their logic, I was like, where did you come up with that? They were reading different books than I was. And I'm like, what is this? Who's this author that, oh, I read it in a book. What book? Tell me. And you could see everybody in the group was writing this shit down because we're like, that was cool. Where did you come? How did you figure that out? And you've lost that opportunity by narrowing the groups that are participating. You've removed the opportunity for that chaos and the randomness of thought being introduced from people with different perspectives. And it was the other part. This was, I noticed this as well. We would stop. Somebody come in, and it was very, very common, especially in first edition, because first edition was all the rules. There's so much errata after it came out after the fact. We would rule monger. Rule mongering was actually a form. There was a couple kids from the debate team that was in our groups as well, and we would rule monger pretty regular. And it was accepted. It was expected. And we're having a session, and it just turned into, we stopped the gameplay and we turned into a rule mongering. And Robert's Rules of Debate were deployed, and we let's have a conversation. And it was point, counterpoint, and the arguments were set for the validity, and we were challenging each of the arguments we got done. I was like, all right, so we have a ruling. From this point forward, on this particular concept, these are the things that we're going to do going forward. And everybody's like, yeah, we have an accord. Outstanding. This was before Pirates of the Caribbean, but we were like, okay, we have an accord. Yes, we came into a point with a complete disagreement on how something should be done. We stopped, listened to everybody's point of view. There was a lot of disagreement. Each person was given an opportunity to speak their mind, and then we argued. We were then responsible for arguing both pro and con on that point. And we came to, at the end, we agreed. Those that didn't agree, well, like there's one conversation we had. I don't like the way this is went. Well, what do you want to do about it? Well, I just going forward, I won't be playing this kind of game. Not a problem. We'll make a note. So he said, but I would like to, if you're going to do this kind of game, I'll be there. I'm like, done. But you were allowed to have these kind of arguments and disagreements, and then make concessions. You learned to negotiate. You learned to when to feel butthurt and when not to feel butthurt. And you learned how to communicate with individuals that you just flat disagreed with in a fashion that when you got done, you're like, okay, we're still friends. I think you suck, but we're still friends. And we then got back to playing the game, and it was okay. I watched my nephew play, and it was not okay. And that hurt a little bit, quite honestly, because I was like, you're missing the spirit of the game. So I really believe that there was a period. I think it's kind of coming back to be a little more. The strife is a little more accepting, and more adding people of, especially with the online gaming. There, I've noticed a couple group. I join, especially with the Free Press group. I would join in as a player, somebody else a DM, and man, we did not agree. And we're right. I'd get into the game, and I'm like, no, man, that doesn't float. And here's my reasons why. And they're like, well, I'm the DM, and I say no. I was like, okay, if it's your game, it's your rules, not a problem. No, it's in the book this way. There are house rules, and if we can say that sucks, and we can all agree that sucks, we might want to change the house rules If you're saying the rules are as the book, not a problem, man. I can play that game too. And
Right.
I can also choose not to join you in the future. It's trying to find a regular playing group has become significantly more difficult as I've gotten older, because the mentality of the game itself, of the people playing the game, has, for lack of a better word, has become quite a bit less tolerant. They don't give you the opportunity. You're not being given an opportunity to go, I have a concern, kind of a thing. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does, but I also I do think it's kind of funny that you put it that way, because then there's like the whole concept of like safety tools, which for some reason my head says that you have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's this proposal there's a variety of different ways to do it. But typically it involves essentially the player going to the GM and saying, well, no, I don't want to do that. The common one is like, they like using what's called the X card. So, if you don't approve of something, well, you tap the X card and then the GM is supposed to change the adventure. Like, if you're afraid of spiders, well, tap the X card and he's going to change it from spiders into, kobolds or something. Which, I think counteracts your statement, but not entirely, because I also think it is, I don't think it's approached with the same type of mutual understanding that you're talking about. We're playing this game. Okay, we disagree about something. Let's figure out where we can agree. Whereas the safety tools usually seem more of, I'm going to have it my way and you're going to accommodate me.
I hadn't heard the term safety tools. I felt very, very lucky in the fact that I got invited to do some beta testing on a particular system, and that was their big. You got to make sure you have. It was. I got pulled into a group and we had a conversation. It was a series of semi-professional to professional DMs, and they were talking about game masters that were talking about how to create an environment that's appropriate for conventions, or if you're going to be paid to do some DMing stuff. Because I was looking at it and I was like, because I can spin a tale. I'd like to think I can. And they started talking about, it's like, oh no, you've got to set up alternatives, because if you've got an individual, if you've created a triggering event for one of your players, you have to be able to change the environment so that they feel safe within the environment that you're playing with. I said, that is a separate conversation. If I've got a player in the group that is making another player unsafe in the gaming experience, I'm going to have a conversation real quick to just like, hey, what are you doing? What's the point of this? Is this an in-character thing or is this a personal thing? If this is in character, then what end is your goal for this? We're going to have a backstory and a character definition moment. I remember as a younger DM having that conversation. We had a young lady join us, and we were all very, very excited about the fact, because gamer girls were very, very rare at that particular point in my life. They're not nearly as common as they are today. And we had an individual at the table that just he took a turn down the side path that was like, that's dark and there's something wrong here.
You're creepy.
Or creepy. And we tabled it, pulled him off the side, and it's like, all right, define your character. What are you doing and why? This either stops. One, I want this young lady to come back to the table. She's awesome, and it's really cool that she feels safe enough to be here to do the things. And if you're going to ruin it for the rest of us, we're going to have a conversation, and you're not going to like it. And that was the end of it. He was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again." It was just the rest of the group policing the particular moment. To have the difficulty of it is that if you can't have that kind of a conversation as adults, there's something else going on here that's a problem. I get it. There's certain kinds of stories that bring up topics and scenarios that are extremely uncomfortable and may be extremely sensitive to a particular member of your group. It's a conversation you should have before you start. Set the expectation. Right. If you're setting appropriate expectations, this shouldn't be a problem. At the same time, I do believe it's the DM's responsibility to be monitoring his particular parties. If you get somebody going down a path, it's like, all right, what's going on? Have a quick conversation. Stop the game outright, or to tap and pivot on a particular story. That seems extreme to me. At the same time, so I'm conflicted. I understand where some of these people are coming from, and I will agree to a particular point. If you get a creep in the group, male or female, welcome to today's world, that goes down a path that's particularly dark and questionable, morally questionable, you have to have the conversation. Is this action or activity appropriate for the setting and the character? If it is, then let's redefine the direction of this particular game and what we're going to do and who's comfortable with that particular direction. If it's not, then let's change the behavior.
Right. Actually, I think that's kind of the way that you described it is kind of interesting. Because usually when it's approached, it's, it's usually in terms of like address it before the game starts. Like they actually, like some cases they're like, oh, here's a sheet and list out all of your phobias and things that you don't like, which doesn't ever sound like it's going to end well. But
that doesn't sound like fun.
No, it doesn't sound like fun at all. But I do like the way that you brought that up where, okay, right, I'm because for some reason I like it, the conversation always defaults back to, I don't like spiders. But I liked your approach of, okay, wait a second. Is this a you problem or is this a character problem? And, and adjusting things accordingly. I mean, Grim brings up who apparently is chatting all the time in chat today. Thank you, Grim. No, I just think it's funny because I keep highlighting her stuff. So, but she says, I feel like that's a hard one because I understand where some people might have a trauma, abuse, etc. But at the same time, if it's just, I don't like spiders, then it's like, you'll be uncomfortable for a bit and then it will be over. And it's not real. So you'll be fine. People these days seem to think that you can't be uncomfortable.
Well, all right, and this is my interjection on that is there was I was watching a rabbi have a conversation about how you grow. Have you seen the video about the individual? He talks about how do lobsters grow? A lobster can only grow is if it feels immense pressure. Does it know that its carapace is actually too small? So it must experience pain in an uncomfortable situation to signal to itself it is now time to grow, so that it then produces the appropriate hormones and endures the uncomfortable situation so that it can shed its carapace so that it can become larger and a bigger lobster. Now, I've completely butchered that parable and condensed it severely. If you are unwilling to experience an uncomfortable situation, you have no idea if this is a situation that is going to permanently harbor your progress or if this is something that you can get over. Generally speaking, a human animal is risk averse They're pain risk averse. They will adjust their behavior based off of input of pain. However, I know that as an older gentleman, if I don't produce an uncomfortable amount of pain in my body, my joints and bones and muscles will not maintain its strength necessary so that I can enjoy myself as I move on into my 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I seek out an uncomfortable situation so that I can enjoy things more later. It's a different perspective. How many times did I come to you in a very uncomfortable conversation? It's like, I have no idea what path to go down. I need some guidance so I can go down a different way and learn some things that I don't have to come back here and bug you about this particular questions. There was multiple people in the server group that I did this to, and you specifically. You go in, you find out what you don't know or what makes you feel uncomfortable, and then slam your face into it and see what happens. You might see stars. You might get a callus. You might get a bruise. You might come out a better person. If you don't like it, go another way. If you changed or you were able to tolerate it better, go that way. It's a different perspective on how you live your life. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I mean, like, as we're sitting here talking about this, like,
don't come to Australia, he says.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Seraphis is from the imaginary land of Australia,
where everything wants to kill you.
Yes, where everything wants to kill. I mean, it's imaginary, so why wouldn't it kill you? Yeah.
Stranger Things, the Upside Down.
Yes. Seraphis is in the Upside Down. Okay. That's correct.
That's terrifying. Its own.
Actually, that does make it even creepier.
A little bit, doesn't it?
But it is one of those things where, like, okay, we talk about how, or like a lot of people will talk about how role-playing games can be therapeutic, but should not be used as therapy. But It is one of those things where, what kind of a situation are we going to be in? People talk about the different problem-solving abilities, the social abilities, again, because I keep bringing it up, going back to the old school games, suddenly it's like, okay, we have the jock, the band geek, the mechanic, who are all playing the game together, who now have to associate with each other, even though their social circles wouldn't normally overlap, and so I do think it's a good thing to get out of those comfort zones. Like next week, Kim and I are going to a board game convention, which I kind of struggle with because I now have to meet people to play games with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how's that going to work? I've seen you in public spaces. I do okay. Really well. There's certain skills, and this is me trying to give you a compliment so that you understand, so you better accept your own personal worth. You have an innate skill to put on a face so that when you're in a public space with a lot of people that you don't know, I can see inside. You are vibrating. You're looking for every exit possible, including up, and you do not want to be there. You are in an uncomfortable place. And yet you're willing to take the time to explain a point. You'll if you see genuine concern or curiosity, that stops you dead, and you want to have a conversation because it's like, ooh, what this you're really curious about? Let's talk about it. And which is hilarious because then this makes you approachable, which once again goes against your core being of people.
Why are you talking to me?
Exactly.
Why am I online? Why am I doing a live stream to talk to random people on the interwebs?
Exactly. So you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation so that you can be a better person. You can be there for other people, and you can be a better person for yourself and your family. That's who you are.
Sure.
And quite on back to the original point of the conversation is what brought us together. What changed us from acquaintances to friends was the ability to come back to that well of knowledge. And what if? Have you thought of this? Did you know these things? Have you considered this point? Let's go down a tangent. Let's discuss some random topic that, even though I don't have true interest, I find fascinating. And off we'd go.
Yeah.
So this you that's why I think when you first signed up, the first time I saw you go into a board, was it Chicago that you went to work
Probably.
on a board game, and this was quite a while ago. I apologize. And I was sitting there going, Mr. B Wade's going to do what? And man, you came back and you were floating for a couple days. You were just vibrating with energy and excitement when you got back from that one. And I personally thought you were going to crawl up into a corner and just pass out, but you were riding a high that was unbelievable. Words are hard, unbelievable to watch, because that's the first time I had seen you excited, that excited and charged from dealing with other people. And that just made me so happy to see you in such a great place.
Well, I absolutely appreciate that. Like, this is weird. I'm learning things about myself that I didn't know. So I'm glad we did this. No, it is one of those things where, like, for me, it's really weird. Like I'll go into a store, I'll go to a convention, and if I'm there as an attendee, it is a struggle to get over that hump and get in, talk to people, sit down, play a game, learn something, whatever. But if I've gone working a booth, it is a completely different game, because now I can switch and people are walking by. Hey, did you see this? Hey, do you want to look at this? Hey, come over here. Let's take a look. Sit down. Let's have some fun. And it is a very, very different experience, but also a lot of fun. Man, I don't think I've actually worked a booth since like 22.
Well, there you go. Put it on your calendar, man.
Yeah, that's a separate issue, but we'll get to that. But yeah, so we're going to the board game convention next week, and I like the last couple of years, like I've always taken some stuff and I've just run some demos a little bit. But this year I'm still kind of debating, do I want to do that or do I want to just like force myself? It's like, okay, screw it. Let's just get in and just find all the groups I can and play everything. So,
well, exactly. It's one of the things that I find one of the nicest parts about the adventure that Mike, Kim, and I are on is we get to go to different places. Travel for 3 hours, stay for 3 days, and then circle of adventure out of that. And so that's the circle of adventure is 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours from your location. What are the things to do? And mostly I'm playing classic old white dude concepts. I'll stereotype myself. I'm doing museums. I'm doing nature trails, and I'm doing museums. It's very old people of me, right?
Well, I mean, your hair matches, so it's fine.
It's très sexy though, isn't it?
It's very.
The fun part, yeah. When I went from having going from Silver Fox to white-haired old man, you're getting old when they stopped asking you for your are you do you get the senior discount? They just bing. I'm like, oh, I hate you. I have 5 years to go, you buggers.
But I will take the 10% off.
I'll take that 10%. Right. I've taken the opportunity instead to look at it is that each stop is a chance to learn. Because I don't have a destination in mind, generally speaking, and I have all day to get there, generally speaking, I will stop at a road sign and read it. If I see a pretty rock, I'll stop and I'll ask, because this is the best part. Every trip in my life is a geology field trip because that's my wife. So I'm going to learn about the geology. Where I may understand the geography of the situation, I'm going to learn about the geology, and I'm going to learn a lot. What's this rock? Why is this fold this way? Why are the different rocks? Why are the different layers the way they are? Oh man, and because once I can get Kim talking on it, off we're going to go. In the meantime, we get to our little place. We do our circle of adventure. It's either going to be a nature walk or it's going to be a museum. And while I'm in that museum, I am reading all the fine print. Why? Because this tells me things that I didn't learn in the books when I was in school. And it also makes me stop and go, who wrote the book that I read when I was in school? And why doesn't this agree with that book? And now I want to find other authors or similar authors, or read more of that particular author. And this takes me down a bunch of little bitty trails. And I find, to bring this back to the gaming concept, this has sparked a little bit of curiosity on my side, where joined a couple groups. Discord's awesome for that kind of stuff. Reddit, of course, will take you down all kinds of rabbit holes that you may never see the light of day again. That is going to introduce you to a wide variety of gaming system and people that's going to test your mind, your limits, and your curiosity in ways that you hadn't considered before. The difficulty of it is you have to be willing to take that chance. And I've got nothing to lose, so why not?
Well, and actually, and speaking of taking a chance, being the senior gamer that you are, I'm trying to find different terms for old as opposed to just keep using the same ones over and over.
Aged.
Aged. Hold on one. That's weird. Okay, the squirrels just hit like super hard. Anyways, okay. All right. It's official. I feel like we missed out on something yesterday not having Zane there.
Well, I was very disappointed. Because it was an opportunity missed. It really, really was. There were because I really do look forward to an opportunity to share the mind's eye with Seraphin, because the conversations that you've broadcasted have really piqued my interest. But with that being said, there were several other people there that I'd never seen or interacted with before, so there was a great deal to listen, learn, and experience as you interact and unfold in the situation. So in my mind, it was an opportunity missed. At the same time, it afforded me the opportunity to do this. So, I'll take the win.
I was gonna say, Sarah, I know Seraphis wasn't here in the beginning, which is fine. I'm not complaining, but he did miss the point that part of this conversation is to give you a makeup from yesterday, even if it's not necessarily, playing the game. So, see, so I try to take care of people, Seraphis. You should know that by now. Anyway, so the question that I wanted to ask, trying to, loop it back around to more gaming topics. So obviously, since you were there in many of the early days, what, did you just stick with Dungeons and Dragons, or did you get into a lot more variety of games?
A lot of variety. We had a core D&D group. There was 6 of us that rotated. We played every other week, and usually which was interesting. It was every other week, same group of people, It was an ongoing storyline. However, the DM rotated. So we all, as a whole, we knew the generalized path of what was going on for this world. It was just that we took turns doing the dungeon mastering job, because that way everybody got you got a different perspective on how somebody else ran the concept. And I found that a lot of fun, because you had to take really good notes at the end of the story. At the end of the story, literally, at the end of that week, that encounter, the DM's job was to write a synopsis. And even though you were there as a player, you handed it to the next DM and said, and they built the next. They then had the 2 weeks to build, whoever's turn it was, to build the next encounter. That was beyond fun. But at that point, we've been playing 4 or 5 years. We at the core, the biggest group of us, like I said, we 15, 16, less than 20 of us total in and out over about a 10-year period. And we started splintering into groups. I'm a big fan of Asimov and Clark. Vern, I'm a hardcore Vern and Wells, more of a Vernian, quite honestly, than a Wells fan. So we went down Twilight 2000. We went down Traveler. We when Cars first came out, Paranoid, James Bond 007. I can't. I'm going to butcher some of the names of the operating games.
You did already.
We tried a lot of one shots. It's like somebody would come to the group and said, "Hey, peeps, I want to run this game, and it's in this system." And we're like, "I don't even know what that is." Well, come over to the house and you can borrow the book and do the thing, and we're going to meet in 3 weeks, and I've got a thing. Okay. So we would different people in the brought forward. This is where I got introduced to Masquerade, which that was a trip. This is where I got introduced to lost the words. The net.
Cyberpunk.
Words are hard, man. Cyberpunk, exactly. I got introduced into. It was a 3.5 hours of one decking. It was like, it was also the fastest total player kill I've ever seen. Moron popped the grenade in a convenience store. Didn't go well. Because at that point I'd already exited service, and this guy was, "I'm going to throw a grenade." I'm like, it's too late. He did it. Yeah, no, we're all dead. We different people would come to the group as a whole and say, "Hey, I want to do a game." Like I get invited to go and participate when the SCA first started, Society for Creative Anachronisms. Were really early on, and they hadn't really done the whole live action role play that they are now. It was it's like, here we're going to LARP. The LARPing, or if you want to do physical arms combat, or now they're doing all the duchies and things and blah, blah, blah. That's how I got invited to a Masquerade game, and that was bizarro land. So much fun. Werewolf. We got into the horror games. It was a Cthulhu based. I can't remember the name of it.
Call of Cthulhu.
Is it? All I know is I failed like 3 sanity checks, and I was bonkers cuckoo in the first game. It was great. It was the people that we were with, even though most of them were acquaintances and not friends. It was the kind of a gathering where, as a whole, we knew the most of the people. We knew their interests. And we, as a group, we encouraged everybody to. It's like, just because you've been a player this whole time, why don't you run a game? You don't know. You might like it, or you might have a perspective that I've never even considered. That ought to be weird. We did a game in Pathfinder that we were all mushrooms. That was Bizarro Land. We did. Was it Dark Sun? What's the one? I think it's Dark Sun. Is the one where there's no metal. It's
Dark Sun.
That was brutal. We turned that into a pure survivalistic game, and that was just savage. We combined genres. That was some fun stuff. So yeah, no, we went down. If you could think of a way to take a game and skew it, I remember when the Underdark came out. We wanted to play a group of Duergar. Okay, why not? Well, that turned into a wow. It's like, hey, let's try a thing. It's like, we're gonna all be kobolds today. Let's go over here. We're gonna be zombies today. We're gonna go over here. We're going to be we're in Europe and here's Twilight 2000, but we're gonna fast forward 100 years, see how that plays out. Or here's what was the Gamma World? Gamma World, we went 7 ways of sideways on that one. Rifts was another one that you want to talk about flip genres on the whim. So yeah, we played I was very, very lucky. I count myself as very fortunate that I had the acquaintances that had the imagination and the confidence to try these strange things and invite me along for the ride. And that's the way I look at it. Is I've been both lucky and fortunate, because there's a difference between fortunate and lucky, and I've been both in that particular thought process, and I think that's really what keeps me going and wanting to do the games more so today, is because there's so many more people that are coming out with little twists and turns and side genres that I was like, oh, I'd like to give that a whirl. It's just now most of the people my age have stopped, or they're not as inclusive in their and I use that word begrudgingly, they're not as inclusive in their group. They're very restrictive who they'll let in to play, because now they've become almost curmudgeon-y.
Almost
curmudgeon-y. They know these people work well together, and these people know how this person DMs. Therefore, they're not adding new people, and I'm a little that makes me a little sad. Sometimes you have to walk hand in hand with chaos if you're going to have any fun. So,
no, I think that's a really good point. It like, as you were talking about just the different things that you've played, like I remember, seeing or hearing about many of those games. And I think even now there is still I'd say actually there's a bigger problem of getting people to be willing to try different games and different genres. It's not necessarily a joke, but kind of the point about, like me, I don't run a game because I'm absolutely terrified of it. But your comment about, like encouraging people and getting people to try running the game, not just, so that other people can get a chance to play, but because they're going to bring a different perspective, because like until they step out of that box to try something new, they might not know that they really would enjoy it. And I think those are two really strong points that don't get brought up enough.
Well, yeah, I give you. I remember when Seven Seas came out, and I don't know if that one's still active, but it's a pirate game, right? It was somewhere between Civilization and Pirates, and it was mostly supposed to. Well, the way that I can't remember if this is Seven Seas or not.
I don't think so. Seven Sea is I mean, it's pirates, but well, I mean, I think they've written a lot more politics into it, but it's like it's not so much like a tactical we're gonna control area like you would with a Civilization kind of game.
Well, and that was the thing, is the way we played this particular game is that they were competing factions within. There was an overarching the rules of piracy, and there was the East Indian Trading Company was of course there were privateers, and there was the East Indian Company that was kind of the sea police, and then we had both. Pardon me. You could work within. I forget the terminology, but you could either work within a group or you could try to be an independent. And we were trying to, at one point, that's like, all right, so we know that I'm going to, how are we going to run today? Are we going to try to be merchants, or are we going to be pirates? Are we going to harass the trading lanes? Or are we going to try to participate in the trading lanes? And the game went a couple different ways, and it's like trying to build. It's like, all right, I understand the ports and what you're doing, and as the game master's job was not only to you were the town, you were the sheriff, you were the mayor, you were the port authority, you were also the opposing force on the open seas, and you were nature. And then the players were trying to work together, and their job was not necessarily. You might have somebody in your group that's wanted and can't set foot in this port, so you have somebody else that's got to do, even though they've got the best ability to negotiate, they can't go into this port, and you've got to go into this port to do a thing, to get the thing so that you can succeed at the mission that you're trying to get done. And you watch the players work within the system and work together so that they're bouncing off of each other in a helpful fashion, rather than stabbing each other in the back to see who can come out on top. And that was, it was a load of fun. We only played that for like 6 months. That was one of our off groups, and unfortunately, it turned into a battle, and all hands were lost. And, well, that didn't work. And then there was no. We kind of played out the storyline, and everybody kind of got out of it what they mostly wanted out of it. So we didn't go back to the game. And that's how we moved through the systems, the different gaming systems, is somebody had an idea. Question for Zane, please ask, and I'll have at the end of the stream. So, oh, that's you.
I said, if anyone has any questions.
Is there anybody participating in the stream? I can't see that part, so I have no idea. We generally tended to start a system based off of somebody had an idea, and they wanted to go down a path. Now you got to remember, like our examples of sci-fi back in this is like Space 1999, Battlestar Galactica, Red Dwarf. What was I can't remember. So there was this is some real cheesy sci-fi, right? Then if you were a hardcore fan, we had Logan's Run, we had Silent Running, it's Soylent Green, Planet of the Apes. We had our movie. What we were pulling for movies was quite a little bit different. It wasn't. It definitely wasn't as pretty, but it was the ideas definitely send you down a path. And somebody come in and it's like, hey, I've got an idea. We're going to play Pathfinder. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Well, that's okay. Come over and read the books. And you go through and say, oh, okay, this is similar. I just have to, the rules are different. It's effectively similar. Let's do a thing. Okay. Off we go. Somebody read a set of books. That's how I got into Horse Clans. Alan. And then Steve Jackson made a game, released a couple really horrible source books. Horrible source books. Well, the second source book was so bad that they did a recall and they never did a reprint. I kid you not, man. Go look that one up.
Bad production quality or just bad like game design quality?
Oh, there was so many there was typos, the rules didn't reflect it was just bad. It was just you could you're like, anybody who'd read the books were like, I don't think that's what it means, what you think that means. And we homebrewed the snot out of Horse Clans from GURPS. We homebrewed the bejeebies out of it. It was the only way to make it playable. And when the second book came out, I remember one of my buddies had it, and we kind of looked at it and went, nope, and we just chucked it. We didn't even use it. We were just, this is garbage. But that was what drove us. Is somebody'd read a book, somebody'd watch a movie. Friday Night Lights would come on, and we'd watch some horrible pop culture, off the beaten path, horror movie, sci-fi, whatever. And we're like, I want to play a game. Or we were constantly, this was before gaming stores. There was no real game store. It was a comic shop, also happened to have gaming material in it. So it was kind of a conglomeration.
Right,
and
right.
his actual big business was sports cards, football and baseball, hockey, basketball cards. That was his main money. And then everything else there was a shelf for those things. And one of us would get a phone call from the owner of the store, say, hey, I got a new demo game. And we wouldn't play the game in the store. He'd lend us the book. And we'd tear it apart, read it like the mad fiends that we were, and probably get half the rules wrong anyway. But we let that theater of the mind, and we just go off on a topic. And I think what I'm trying to say more than anything else is that I find myself very lucky that there was an extended group of people that were willing to take the time to put themselves into a very uncomfortable situation and try something completely different. Did it fail a lot? Oh yeah. We made a lot of mistakes, a lot of TPKs. At the same time, we had a lot of laughs, and I count myself very, very fortunate to have had the opportunity to hang out with some of these people and flex my mind in that fashion. I don't think I don't think I would find vampires and werewolves nearly as much fun as I do if it hadn't been for this it was a young goth gal, a freak of nature. She was like 6'4", 6'5", built like a beanpole. And we're talking early 80s goth. So just, the clove cigarettes and the whole thing. And she was like, hey, so I'm driving around a 74 Dodge Charger in primer gray because I hung out with, like you said, the motorheads. And so I'd been turning wrench, and I was working on my car because it was always broke. And so I elbow up to my grease, and this very well dressed, very immaculate young lady, as different as it could be, because I also rode motorcycles, so I dress leathers and denim boots and I just that look, right? Long hair. I think today they call them somewhere between a hippie and a greaser is what I'd have fit. That's a sight, isn't it? And up walks this goth chick. And she's like, hey, Zane, I'm going to this thing in the hills. We lived in the Black Hills of South Dakota. There's going to be a thing in the hills. And it's a live action role playing, and it's about vampires. Would you like to, I need somebody to go with, because her boyfriend couldn't go. And I'm like, yeah, okay. What do I got to, I don't know what it is. Just show up. You'll be fine. That was this socially awkward nightmare of my life, and it was so much fun. But there's all these people prancing around, pretending like they're, there's a live action role playing. They're pretending to be vampires. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Well, in your case, clearly you just roll with it and, have a wonderful time. I just don't get the invite, but that's me.
Well, we've had this conversation, and it's not, there's a barrier to entry, and I've made it my mission to try to remove as many barriers to entry as humanly possible. I have some lines I won't cross because I have my own moral code. And for the most part, the people that are around me agree with or support the choices that I've made. I also make it known to as many people as humanly possible. It's like, you want to have a conversation, I will be more than happy to play devil's advocate with you. Bring up a topic, pick whichever side you want. I'll take the other. Let's have some fun.
Clearly, I mean, we've only been doing that for almost 2 hours now.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. No, chitty chat. I you get me, poke me a little bit, and I will ramble.
Sure. No, and that's why I wanted to.
Oh, I lost.
That's why. Hold on. What? Zane?
There, your audio flipped in and out there for a hot second.
Okay. I wonder if it's from my VPN. I don't know. No, that should be fine. Anyways, it might be you. But okay, so at this point, I probably should have a follow-up, but I don't, and I'm slightly distracted because of time. Give me 1 second. So I think what we're gonna do is end it here.
Okay.
For the live stream. Not that I necessarily. Not that I necessarily
comment.
Okay. So Grim, I was going to say, we have a couple of questions. So Grim would like to know if you have your own channel where you tell these interesting stories.
No, I do not. One, thank you very much for the question. Two, generally speaking, I don't find my stories all that interesting, and I pleases me to know that you do. So it's one of the, my wife, my Kim, pokes me often and tells me either to write it down or put it. So I do Instagram. I do the Instagram and I do the Facebook. I things where I post tidbits of odd things that I see in the moment, mostly recording nature and or the particular environment that I'm in. Those are the things that I do. No, I have not done YouTube to my wife's chagrin. I haven't been able to convince myself that I would bring value to that platform. Let's put it that way.
Got it. Then what we'll do in the meantime is we will figure something out. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to make Thursday nights a regular thing. Not that Zane has to show up every Thursday, but I guarantee, Graham, the short answer is I guarantee you that I'm bringing Zane back on a more semi-regular basis. So he'll be back. He'll tell us more stories. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Then we have one more question. Seraphis would like to know, why are you friends with Brian?
Mostly because I found Brian brought a perspective to life that I had not, at that point in my life, I had not yet experienced. And he was willing to have an uncomfortable conversation. And even though it made him uncomfortable, he knew I wasn't doing it out of spite. So I could have that conversation on an irregular basis. And that and the most common thing that joins people is we found humor in certain other people's misfortune, and we quietly giggled together in the corner while watching these things. So
that's very true. That is very. I remember, like when you got to be a supervisor, and I was still schlub number 27, but then it was the middle of the night, and Zane would come walking by, and he's like, "You know what? I'm going to sit with Brian, and we're just going to, complain about things."
Join me as we wander down the path of bizarreness and joy. Oh yeah, no, it was, and it was one of the things that I find fascinating about that particular encounter is that I didn't understand in that particular point in my life. I didn't understand why you were not, from a technical standpoint, in a more prestigious position based off of your knowledge and skill set. And then I came to find out that it was more the fact that, one, you didn't want the drama and or the attention. And I was like, I can absolutely jive with this. This is let's hang out.
I thought it was more because I was an idiot and didn't know what I was doing, but I guess that works.
No, that there was a level of self-deprecation that I could absolutely identify with. So it was two peas in a pod.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree to that. So, and also, Seraphis, to get more detail on why Zane is friends with Brian, just rewind and watch the beginning of the stream. We actually covered that. So it was
Steve Schwimmer Gersh, where have you been?
I learned a lot. That was the crazy part. So anyhow. All right. Well, on that note, Zane, thanks for hanging out. Like literally this like you showed up in the backstage yesterday and I'm like, I get to see Zane. I don't even think you've posted a picture of yourself in quite some time. You'll do a check-in, which is always like some random
profile picture, bro.
What?
Your Facebook profile picture is very old.
I'm not talking a profile picture. I've posted newer anyways, I've got a whole peanut gallery going on over here. Anyways, the point I was making is but seeing you show up in backstage, I was very excited, and then you kept falling out, and I was very less excited. So I'm glad we got to do this. But anyways, I absolutely loved your perspective. I actually have to completely agree with Grim. Like, just listening to some of these stories and having this discussion about games, I realized we didn't quite touch on the subject line of what gaming means to us. But I think a lot of that can be inferred in the discussion that we had.
I would agree. I will endeavor in the future to stay more on topic than randomly. I've gotten better at bringing it back around to the question that was asked.
Zane, what did I call the show? I call the show Topics and Tangents.
Oh, we tangent.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
No, that's I'd be more than happy to rejoin you on a conversation at a later point. That's not a problem.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't think. Anyways, we'll figure out that schedule. But I'm glad that you want to do it. So, folks. All right. On that note, I've got to go to work because I'm a weirdo who, thinks he needs to work 50 to 75 hours a week. Whatever. But unfortunately, there's no specific place to find Zane on the interwebs. But he'll be back. He'll tell us new stories, and it'll be great. But in the meantime, hit the like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. And otherwise, if you're watching this on replay, actually put questions down in the comment section. I'll get them to Zane. He'll come back and he'll answer more questions. It'll be great. So, any final thought, Zane?
No, actually, none at all. It's like, are there any final thoughts? None that I can resolve in the next 3 minutes. Let's put it that way. My squirrels are doing 95, and it's like, no, we're not going to open that bag of worms. So we'll save it for the next one.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out, and we will talk to you next time.